Starting today, my husband wants us to live with my parents. I was caught off guard by this sudden suggestion. We just said goodbye to my father, who recently passed away after being sick for a long time. Despite the sadness of the funeral still lingering, my husband packed up and left our house. He said we're moving to a villa my father left me. When we got there, my in-laws were already settled in. My name's Natalie, I'm 33, and I'm a designer who's just started living on my own. I've been living with Justin for 3 years now since we got married. My career as a designer is flourishing and I'm known in my field. I earned well enough to have the apartment under my name. Sadly, my mother passed away during my college years, and last year, my father was diagnosed with cancer. Despite his brave fight, the disease progressed, and the doctors warned us to prepare for the worst. My father has always been there for me, especially since I started working. He's been a constant support and a vital part of my life. Learning about my father's illness shook me to the core. As his health deteriorated, I couldn't sleep, consumed by worry and fear. My husband asked about my dad's condition often, but his concern felt hollow. It seemed like he was waiting for the worst to happen. He's always felt insecure about earning less than me, and I wished he'd take pride in my success and be there for me when times get tough. He had a playful side, always wanting to win, even in simple things. My dad assured us not to worry and to focus on our relationship, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we should visit him while we still can. I was finding it harder to hide my growing frustration with my husband. In the beginning, our marriage was full of love and joy, but his insensitive comments about my dad's illness changed things. I realized he wasn't the same loving husband anymore. He works from home and thinks having someone around distracts me, but I plan to work from home too once I'm independent. I decided to rent a small office and commute, making it easier for me to visit the hospital. Meanwhile, my husband stayed home, leaving all the household chores for me to handle. Juggling work, taking care of my father, and coming home exhausted, I often found a mess waiting for me, with dishes left unwashed. It was clear he only thought of himself, disregarding my feelings. Living with him made me realize how little he understood me, leaving me feeling deeply lonely. Then my father passed away. We had already sold our family home as we had discussed with him. As I busied myself with funeral arrangements, my husband seemed distant, more focused on phone calls or disappearing altogether. I pleaded with Justin to help me during this difficult time, but his phone interrupted our conversation. When he finally hung up, he brushed off my request, claiming he was busy with work calls. My frustration with him grew, especially amidst the turmoil of losing my father. His demeanor had turned colder, leaving me feeling even sadder. On the day of the funeral, Justin spent a long time chatting with his parents, leaving me feeling alone among the attendees. Despite the tension, the funeral proceeded smoothly, and we were able to wrap up the proceedings without any major issues. Out of the blue, my husband suggested we move in with his parents, as if it were the most natural thing to do. He even joked about divorce if I disagreed. I couldn't believe how casually he said it, especially considering the recent loss of my father. Fueled by grief and frustration, I retorted, "Live with them where? We don't even have a spare room here." In truth, one room in our apartment served as my husband's workspace, filled with his work stuff. Despite us not having kids, he used the space as if it were his own personal domain. "It's the villa you inherited," he said with a grin. I was taken aback. While we'd sold the family home, the villa held special memories of my father and me. I was determined to keep it that way, but my husband didn't seem to care about my feelings and kept pushing his own agenda. Living in that villa would be tough, I tried to explain, but he brushed it off. His parents had already made plans to move there, likely arranged during the funeral. With its spaciousness and peaceful setting, it was probably an appealing choice for them. Their move was already in motion, leaving no room for me to object. Every time I tried to speak up, my husband's disapproval was evident. "You're always thinking about yourself. Your constant absence because of your father's illness and emergencies has taken a toll on me. Do you even realize how much I've had to endure because of your obsession with your father?" His words were harsh, plunging my world into darkness. "Now that your father is gone, you need to listen to me." His year-long struggle was too much to bear. His callous remarks cut deep, leaving me in disbelief. I didn't want to accept that this was who my husband truly was, but it was clear he had little regard for my father or me. I couldn't shake the memory of my father's pain during his final days in the hospital. My father wouldn't have wanted me to just follow my husband's orders, leaving me behind. And he certainly wouldn't have wanted me to abandon my own feelings. In that moment, any love I had for my husband seemed to disappear. I couldn't shake the feeling of bitterness knowing he was excited about the villa while I was still mourning my father's death. Despite my emotions, I tried to warn him. Living in a villa might not turn out as you expect. I highly doubt that, was his response. With that, I had to accept his decision. I packed only the essentials and left our home. My husband looked puzzled at my sparse belongings, but I simply told him, I'll come back for the rest later. I couldn't bear to exchange any more words with him. It was painful to see the faces of my in-laws, who I imagined were eagerly awaiting my father's death and were now happily moving into the villa. I followed my husband in silence, unable to bear the thought of my cherished place being taken over by his desires. While technically a villa, it's more like a cozy family home by the sea, nestled in a neighborhood where life is simple and peaceful. Despite its tranquil surroundings, it's conveniently close to the city center, making it a valuable piece of property. As I stepped out of the station, memories of my childhood flooded back. I remembered how my father used to carry me home on his back after I fell asleep on the train ride. When we reached the villa, my in-laws were already there. I couldn't shake the feeling of suspicion, realizing that my husband must have secretly given them a key without my knowledge. This discovery only added to my unease. The realization that my in-laws had schemed to move into the villa without informing anyone only deepened my mistrust. As I looked around, I could see the excitement in their eyes as they envisioned their future in this home. Despite being a single-family house, it was filled with sturdy furniture chosen by my father and slightly different European-style decor that must have appealed to my mother. "What a beautiful villa. It's simply perfect," they exclaimed. "Goodbye to that cramped apartment. We're so fortunate to be able to live here now. The view from the second floor is breathtaking. Your father was clever to keep such a wonderful home a secret. We should all enjoy it together, as a family." Their enthusiastic remarks only fueled my irritation. It seemed like they didn't fully grasp the weight of my father's passing and simply saw the villa as a luxurious home they lucked into. Truly, both the location and the house are perfect. "We're lucky your father left us this splendid villa. We owe him our thanks," my husband chimed in, joining his insensitive parents in laughter. They cracked open beers to celebrate the move, oblivious to the solemnity of the occasion. I sighed as I prepared snacks, watching them tarnish the precious memories I had of my parents at the dining table. I chose to bury my feelings and endure the night. The next morning, the tranquility of the villa was shattered by my mother-in-law's piercing scream. I instantly knew something was wrong. As I woke up and hurried to investigate, I found my father-in-law and husband causing a commotion, slightly delayed in reaching the source of the scream. In the bathroom, my mother-in-law lay on the floor, clutching her foot with a panicked look. "The floor collapsed under me," she gasped, clearly shaken by the sudden event. "But the floor seems fine. You must have just slipped, right?" My husband and father-in-law seemed oblivious to the severity of the situation as they examined the spot she indicated. However, the floorboards appeared smooth and undamaged. Despite their reassurances, she remained adamant. My father wouldn't have wanted me to just follow my husband's orders, leaving me behind. And he certainly wouldn't have wanted me to abandon my own feelings. In that moment, any love I had for my husband seemed to disappear. I couldn't shake the feeling of bitterness knowing he was excited about the villa while I was still mourning my father's death. Despite my emotions, I tried to warn him, living in the villa might not turn out as you expect. "I highly doubt that," was his response. With that, I had to accept his decision. I packed only the essentials and left our home. My husband looked puzzled at my sparse belongings, but I simply told him, I'll come back for the rest later. I couldn't bear to exchange any more words with him. It was painful to see the faces of my in-laws, who I imagined were eagerly awaiting my father's death and were now happily moving into the villa. As they examined the floor, I was certain it had collapsed. "Have you tried stepping on that slightly different colored part of the floor?" I questioned. Their expressions shifted to surprise as they focused on the spot I indicated. Stepping between them, I leaned forward and pressed my slippered foot on the distinct section. Whoa, what was that? The floorboard made a distinct sound and gave slightly under my weight, snapping back into place when I lifted my foot. If someone unknowingly stepped on it, they'd think the floor had collapsed. "See, the floor sinks a bit. It's like a trap," I explained. "What?" That's dangerous. Is this house defective? They exclaimed. Calmly, I clarified, it's not a defect. My father intentionally installed it in this house. Why would he do that? They asked incredulously. It's what you'd call a mechanical mansion or a trick house, I revealed. As they examined the floor, I was certain it had collapsed. Have you tried stepping on that slightly different colored part of the floor? I questioned. Their expressions shifted to surprise as they focused on the spot I indicated. Stepping between them, I leaned forward and pressed my slippered foot on the distinct section. Whoa, what was that? The floorboard made a distinct sound and gave slightly under my weight, snapping back into place when I lifted my foot. If someone unknowingly stepped on it, they'd think the floor had collapsed. See, the floor sinks a bit. It's like a trap, I explained. What? That's dangerous. Is this house defective? They exclaimed. Calmly, I clarified. It's not a defect. My father intentionally installed it in this house. Why would he do that? They asked incredulously. It's what you'd call a mechanical mansion or a trick house, I revealed. In reality, my father was a devoted ninja enthusiast. This villa was his pride and joy, a treasure he poured his heart and soul into. As a child, I often tagged along while he tinkered with the house's mechanisms or added new ones. That's why there are traps and hidden mechanisms scattered throughout. A shelf you shouldn't touch, a floorboard that gives way when stepped on, a door that requires a specific sequence to open, concealed passageways, and even secret rooms. Every corner of this villa is infused with my father's dreams and ingenuity, cultivated over many years. While it's perfectly suitable for everyday living for me, who grew up here and learned how to navigate all the traps from my father, it's a different story for my husband and in-laws, who are unfamiliar with its quirks. I did warn you that living here would be challenging, and I also mentioned that it's a place filled with my father's memories. My father's intense ninja obsession is pretty well known among her relatives. It's surprising you didn't know, I remarked. Initially, my husband denied any knowledge, but now he seemed speechless. My in-laws were equally taken aback by this revelation. With our apartment lease already canceled and nowhere else to go, they turned to my husband for guidance on what to do next. Amidst the chaos, both my father-in-law and husband inadvertently triggered another trap, causing them to stumble. As I watched them sprawled on the ground, I couldn't help but chuckle. Feel free to make yourselves comfortable for as long as you need, I said, my tone more sarcastic than welcoming. They had been enamored by the villa's luxury, ignoring my warnings and showing little interest in my father's peculiar hobbies. Now, they were experiencing the consequences of their oversight. Even my attempts to explain the dangers of the traps fell on deaf ears. It's no big deal. We'll get used to it, my husband insisted confidently, and I responded with a knowing smile. I'll head back to the apartment to get things ready for our move, I told them before leaving them at the villa. However, the truth was, I had no plans for moving preparations. Instead, I intended to take a few days off to sort through my father's belongings. As expected, just 2 days later, my husband and in-laws had had enough. During that brief period, I found comfort in being alone, allowing me to slowly regain a sense of positivity as I planned my next steps. Before long, my father's villa gained attention as a unique attraction in the neighborhood. It became known as the Trick Mansion and was regularly featured in local newsletters. Curious visitors would stop by whenever the villa was unoccupied. Looking back, I remembered strangers touring the villa and local children playing nearby, making it a vibrant spot in the community. My father had listed both the villas and our old home's phone numbers in the newsletters. However, with the family home sold, any inquiries would now come to the villa's number. Thanks to my upbringing, I was able to handle calls from foreign visitors as I was proficient in foreign languages. However, my husband and in-laws struggled with foreign languages. In addition to the stress of navigating the villa's traps, they were overwhelmed by unexpected visitors and foreign language calls. Exhausted and sleep-deprived, they retreated to the apartment. Why don't we all just live here together? My husband suggested. After eagerly awaiting my father's passing to claim the villa, they were ready to give it up after just 2 days. Instead of offering them tea, I handed my husband divorce papers that I had already prepared and signed. There's no way we can live together under these circumstances. If you understand, please leave quickly, I said with a heavy heart. I couldn't forgive him for disregarding my feelings and acting insensitively without consulting me or providing any explanation. My husband decided that we would move in with his parents, leaving me with all the household responsibilities, as he had never shared them before. Feeling trapped, I confronted him about his selfish decision-making and disregard for my feelings. "What happened to the love you used to show me?" I couldn't help but laugh at his obliviousness. How could I love someone who wished for my father's death and would rejoice when he passed? Handing him only the divorce papers, I escorted them out of the apartment. "Firstly, this is my apartment. If anyone should leave, it's you." Despite my calm demeanor, my husband raised his voice, showing no concern for our neighbors. However, I remained firm. "Nathalie, I'll call the police for trespassing. If you don't want that, leave quietly." Their voices fell silent upon realizing the apartment was in my name. They relied on me financially and didn't have much of their own. However, I had already made up my mind to sever ties before they could begin their lengthy persuasions. Both my husband and in-laws had limited savings. After being forced out of the apartment and unable to return to the villa, they settled into a cheap, low-quality apartment, struggling to make ends meet. They often reminisced about the previous apartment, considering it better. Initially, my husband felt remorseful and apologized frequently. However, as time passed, he became resentful of his parents. With their advancing age, they rarely found stable employment, depleting their savings and pension. Each move only exacerbated their familial discord, as they argued constantly within the thin walls of the apartment. Despite receiving noise complaints, they refused to apologize and instead retaliated, leading to strained relationships with their neighbors. They may soon need to search for another place to live. While my husband used to enjoy working from home, the current apartment lacked the luxury of a dedicated workspace. Struggling to focus on his work, his professional standing and sales took a nosedive. Now he barely makes ends meet with a late-night job at a convenience store and may need to take on multiple part-time gigs to survive. His in-laws regretted allowing their son to dictate their decisions, blaming him for their predicament during their frequent arguments. "If only you had been more responsible, we wouldn't be in this mess. You should have double-checked everything. Don't pin the blame on me. She's the one who kept things hidden," they argued. I remained silent as they continued their accusations. "If only you had communicated better with your father, none of this would have happened. I never imagined we'd end up like this because of our son," they lamented. Yet they had always harbored hopes of inheriting the villa and were elated when my father passed away. I'll never forget that. Following the divorce, I made significant progress in my career as a designer. To cope with my father's passing and these turbulent events, I incorporated ninja elements into my designs, sharing them on social media platforms. Their popularity surged, catching the attention of a major cosmetics company. To my surprise, they approached me for a project, designing packaging with an Asian flair, incorporating ninja elements. It felt like a way to honor my father's memory, so I eagerly accepted the opportunity and poured myself into the work. The project was a resounding success, propelling my career to new heights. With joy in my heart, I shared updates at my parents' graves, grateful for the chance to honor their memory in such a meaningful way. I chose to keep the mechanical house, preserving it as a special place brimming with memories of my father. I began organizing tours and transformed it into a space where both tourists and local children could enjoy themselves free of charge. Soon, the house gained significant media attention, providing much-needed income to cover ongoing expenses. Additionally, online articles about the house were translated into foreign languages, garnering support from international fans. Some of the donations even came from elderly individuals who shared my father's passion for ninjas. I'm committed to maintaining this enchanting place for years to come. Meanwhile, the mechanical house remains a lively center of activity, especially beloved by local children. Is this the famous mechanical house? Where are the surprises? Show us. With the help of dedicated local volunteers, precautions are taken to ensure the children can play safely. Foreign tourists are often amazed by features like the hidden floorboard doors. Wow, this is incredible. I'm so touched to experience such a unique place. What other surprises await? Despite losing my father and going through a divorce over the villa's inheritance, I believe the gains have outweighed the losses. The villa has evolved into a treasure trove of memories shared with loved ones. Through it all, I've experienced personal growth, embracing the future with renewed optimism and hope.
Your mom and dad are really sick. You have to come back home right away. I begged Tyler to help, but he was mean. He said, I'm busy with my friends. Deal with it yourself. You're probably making it sound worse than it is, right? I gotta go. I tried to talk to him again, but he hung up on me. 2 weeks later, when Tyler got home, I told him, they're both gone. Their funerals are done. Tyler looked shocked and confused. What do you mean both? Are you joking? He asked me, scared. No joke. I called you 2 weeks ago about your mom and dad being very sick, I told him. But why didn't you tell me earlier? Tyler was speechless. My name is Jessica Atkins. I'm 56, and I take care of the house full-time. I used to work at an office, but I quit when I got married. I met Tyler in college. I joined the tennis club because a friend asked me to. I didn't know how to play. I just wanted to have fun. But Tyler, who was in charge, was serious about tennis. He'd get mad if you couldn't keep up during practice. Because I was new at tennis, I couldn't even hit the ball with my racket, and Tyler would get mad at me. He'd say, Jessica, seriously, you're just getting in the way. Go do something else, and make me leave the court. His words made me feel really embarrassed. Most of the time, I was only allowed to pick up the balls, hardly ever getting to play. I got so frustrated that I practiced tennis at home. Maybe all that practice paid off. One day, when Tyler served the ball, I hit it back really well. Tyler looked surprised because he thought I'd miss. But then he said, Jessica, that was amazing, with a big smile. In that moment, I realized I had feelings for him. After that, Tyler kept being strict, and I kept trying hard to keep up with his tough training. Then one day, after a while, we were out with friends for our monthly get-together. We do this to strengthen our friendships outside of our usual group activities. On our way home from one of these gatherings, it was just me and Tyler. Suddenly, he told me he had feelings for me. Jessica, I've fallen for you. I want us to be together. I was surprised. Tyler had never shown any signs of liking me before. But I also had feelings for him. So I said, I like you too. Let's give it a try. That was the start of our relationship. Tyler wanted to keep our relationship a secret from our club friends to not affect the team spirit. But I was so in love with him at that time. I was just happy to be with him. We kept dating even after we finished college, and we got married when I was 26. I quit my job as Tyler asked when we got married. I'll always be there for Tyler, I thought. At that time, I was deeply in love, imagining a bright future with Tyler. It's been 30 years since Tyler and I tied the knot. In the beginning, we went on lots of dates and were really close. But as time passed, things started feeling a bit ordinary. Even I didn't put as much effort into my looks as I did when I was younger. I used to wear trendy clothes and always look stylish when going out with Tyler. I remember spending a lot of time on my makeup, but now I'm more relaxed about how I dress. Comfort is key for me these days, so I prefer loose skirts with elastic waists over ones with zippers. Since I stay home most of the time, I don't bother with makeup from morning to night. I can't even remember the last time I wore any. Some people might think I've let myself go. Compared to my younger days, my body has changed quite a bit. I used to be slim, but not anymore. I've gained weight and now look like the before pictures you see on weight loss shows. Maybe this change in how I look is one reason why our relationship feels routine now. Over time, I've noticed Tyler treating me more like a mom than a wife. Even though I'm not his mother, he sometimes jokes, Mom, can I get another coffee? By the way, Tyler's mom still lives nearby, about a 10-minute walk from us, along with his dad. But we live in separate homes. My in-laws are really kind and always worry about me. Because they're so caring, I wanted to support them, so I visited them a lot. But recently, their health has been getting worse. My father-in-law is fighting a serious illness, and the doctors say there's not much more they can do. With tears in his eyes, he told my mother-in-law and me, I want to spend my last days at home. So he left the hospital and is now getting special care at home. Taking care of my father-in-law all by herself, my mother-in-law looks exhausted, and she seems really sad. As a stay-at-home wife, I help take care of my in-laws almost every day, but I know it must be really hard for my mother-in-law to live with him all the time. It's tough, Jessica. Could you stay with us just for one night? She asks me, looking vulnerable. I'm sorry. Tyler comes home at night, I say, even though it hurts to turn her down. I understand. My mother-in-law says sadly when I say no. Every night, I have to take care of Tyler. Tyler is a very bossy husband and never helps with anything around the house. He just leaves his dirty socks everywhere. I have to make sure dinner is ready and warm when Tyler gets home. There's no way I can serve leftovers. If he finds out, he'll get really angry. Once I was late getting home because I was taking care of my father-in-law. When I finally got back, Tyler was furious. You should put me first instead of my dad. I'm your family, remember? He yelled at me, his face all red. I wanted to remind him that my father-in-law is his family too. But I stayed quiet because I knew arguing would only make things worse. Because of moments like this, I'd always have to prioritize Tyler. Every day feels so tight and stressful. As a stay-at-home wife, I feel guilty and can't stand up to Tyler. I couldn't help my sad mother-in-law. I could only look at her with worry. Lately, Tyler's been coming home late a lot, and he never tells me. Sometimes, he even comes home on the last train. You're late again. Tyler came home after midnight one night. I'm back, he said happily. His face was red, and he seemed a bit drunk. Did you go drinking again? You've been coming home late so often. I asked, taking the bag he handed me. I'd earned the money, so I'll spend it how I want, Tyler replied. But you're just a stay-at-home wife, so you should just obey me, Tyler replied gruffly. But don't you think it's happening too often? Who are you going out with all the time? Their families might be worried too, I hesitantly asked Tyler. Maybe you're making people go drinking with you. You've been with the company for so long and hold a high position. It's hard for most people to say no to that. Tyler replied with a smug smile. It's fine. I always go drinking with the same coworker. Plus, he lives alone and is single. He's always happy when I buy him a drink, Tyler said smugly. I couldn't say anything back. Being a stay-at-home wife without much say in things, I had an idea and decided to talk to Tyler about it. Could you tell me beforehand when you're going out for drinks? Your mom seems really stressed, and your dad's not doing well either. I want to be there for them as much as possible. But Tyler laughed off my concerns. No way. I go out when I feel like it. Besides, Mom will handle Dad. Jessica, you should be all for me. As I was shocked by Tyler's harsh words, he said, Stop standing there and get the bath ready. You're so slow with it, and he quickly went to the bathroom. Yes, I'm sorry. All I could do was reply like that. Then one day, Tyler suddenly said to me, I'm going on a trip for 2 weeks starting next week. While I stood there in shock, Tyler cheerfully looked through a guidebook, thinking about what he'd eat. And he was planning to go to Australia. Regaining my composure, I asked Tyler, Why the sudden international trip? What about your job? And I don't even have a passport. Tyler seemed a bit annoyed by my questions. I got a bonus, so I thought I'd just go for it. I've already asked for time off from work, and I'm not taking you, Jessica, so you don't need a passport, right? Tyler answered casually. We haven't even had a proper honeymoon since we got married. Who are you going with? I asked Tyler. Even for day trips, Tyler would say it's a waste of money and never took me along. Now this sudden international trip, it seemed suspicious. I looked at Tyler intently. I'm going with a coworker, Tyler replied. Now hurry up and get dinner ready. I realized it would be hard to question him further. Tyler probably wouldn't answer me if I kept asking, and he might even get angry. Though I felt frustrated, I reluctantly started preparing dinner. And on that day, Tyler set off for his trip early in the morning. But by noon, I found myself desperately calling him. What do you want? I'm about to board a plane for an international trip. Can't you see I'm busy? Tyler snapped at me as soon as he answered. My in-laws are in critical condition. Please, can't you cancel your trip and come home immediately? I pleaded desperately with Tyler. If he hadn't boarded the plane yet, there was still time, or so I thought. But Tyler's response was harsh. I'm on vacation with my colleague. Deal with it on your own. You're probably making it sound worse than it is. I'm busy. Gotta go now. Bye. Wait a second. I tried to reach out to Tyler, but he hung up on me anyway. No matter how many times I called back, he didn't answer. You'll regret this, I muttered to myself. 2 weeks later, I'm back. Tyler came in cheerfully, carrying a big suitcase. I went up to Tyler, feeling angry and upset, and said, "Both their funerals are over." "What?" Tyler looked confused, like he didn't understand. "What do you mean by both their funerals? Are you playing some kind of sick joke?" Tyler panicked, questioning me. I sighed deeply at Tyler's reaction. "It's not a joke. Don't you remember? I called you 2 weeks ago, telling you your parents were really sick," I reminded Tyler. "But why so suddenly?" Tyler trailed off, unable to find the words, and I found myself sitting on the floor. "When I went to see your parents, they both had collapsed and looked really pale. I called an ambulance in a panic, but the doctor said they were both in critical condition. Your dad needed care for a while, and your mom hadn't been well lately. It was just a series of unfortunate events," I explained to Tyler, feeling detached as I recounted what had happened leading up to my in-laws' critical condition. I'm heartbroken that my in-laws ended up like this. I was at their house almost every day and still couldn't save them in time. To this day, I regret not going there sooner. But right now, I'm just so angry at Tyler. My in-laws are his real parents, yet Tyler chose himself over them until the very end. No matter how much I begged, Tyler always put himself first. Remembering the tired look on my mother-in-law's face just makes me even angrier at Tyler, I said to Tyler, who remained silent with a grim expression. He probably can't accept what happened. I decided to confront Tyler further. "It's your fault, isn't it? Choosing a trip with your colleague over your own parents. Did you have a good time on your vacation?" I asked Tyler, trying to hide my anger with a sly smile. But Tyler just stayed silent. So I decided to poke a little further. "Well, I guess going on a trip with your lover is fun, right? But 2 weeks seems a bit long." When I said that, Tyler, almost resigned, started to speak. "You knew?" "Yeah, I've been seeing Baker from work. She's over 10 years younger than you, and she's been comforting me." It was clear that Tyler was indeed having an affair. His recent late nights were probably because of this Baker. As I remained silent, Tyler, thinking I had accepted his confession, continued to talk. "Baker is nothing like you. She's slim, beautiful, and she has a job. You don't compare to her." Tyler was obviously proud of himself. Not bothered at all. I responded casually. He seemed to forget that he had asked me to become a stay-at-home wife after we got married. Then, as if he had an idea, Tyler made a suggestion. "Exactly. Now that my parents are gone and there's no one to object, we can get a divorce and I can live here with Baker. So, leave right now." I was shocked by Tyler's words. Until now, I have been a stay-at-home wife, always going along with whatever Tyler said. I didn't have a steady income of my own, and part of me lacked the confidence to move out and support myself. But after seeing Tyler prioritize a trip with his mistress over his critically ill parents, I didn't want to stay with him anymore. "Fine, I'll leave right now. Goodbye," and with that, I packed a few essentials and left the house. A week later, I found myself staying at a budget motel. My husband Tyler called my cell phone. "Hello?" As soon as I picked up, Tyler spoke up. "I can't find the checkbook at home." He sounded really panicked. But I left all the statements under Tyler's name at the house. That includes the bank book where Tyler's salary is deposited. The only checkbook I took is in my name. "Did you check properly?" As soon as I said that, Tyler shouted, "It's the checkbook in your name. That account had a pretty good amount of money, right? It's joint property, so half of it's mine, isn't it?" After spending recklessly on trips and such, I couldn't believe Tyler was now talking about joint property. Holding back a heavy sigh, I calmly replied, "The money in that checkbook is from gifts I received from my family and savings from when I was single, so it doesn't count as joint property." "You know that." "Tyler, Sounding frantic, responded, "That's a problem. I nearly spent all of my last month's salary and bonus on the overseas trip. I thought I could cover the shortfall in our living expenses by withdrawing from your account. Up until now, I'd kept my checkbook in a drawer where Tyler could easily see it. I had no intention of hiding it from Tyler, so he must have seen the balance. I've moved out, Tyler, so I have no idea about your living expenses. Maybe ask for an advance on your paycheck." I firmly declined Tyler's request. Then, just to give Tyler a heads up, I added, "By the way, there's hardly any inheritance from your parents. They were living on their pensions, and with the cost of your father's care, they were barely getting by. And you better clear out their rented apartment soon, or you'll be paying rent every month." My in-laws have been living in a rented apartment, barely making ends meet with the rent and the cost of caring for my father-in-law. My mother-in-law somehow managed to save and get by each month. I reckon my mother-in-law had her share of worries and stress. "You're kidding," Tyler sounded shocked over the phone. So I decided to give Tyler the final blow. "I have no responsibilities to help you out. You are on your own," I declared cheerfully. "Why?" Tyler's voice was full of disbelief. Despite kicking me out without any income, he seemed to have forgotten that. "I hope they both lose their social credibility. I've got nothing left to lose. Whatever happens to them, it's none of my business. It's all my fault. Just help me out this time, please," Tyler pleaded with a voice full of desperation. "No way. You're going to regret this big time." I told him that and ended the call with Tyler. Tyler and I eventually went through with the divorce. Initially, Tyler resisted, mainly due to financial concerns, but he eventually caved in and signed the divorce papers after persuasion from my lawyer. Tyler always acted tough around me and my in-laws, but seemed submissive around others. He was all talk and no action, unable to stand up to a professional like my lawyer. Our properties were divided equally, thanks to my lawyer's efforts. Tyler had almost depleted his savings on a trip with Baker, so he was strapped for cash. My lawyer predicted Tyler would be uncooperative, but in the end, I was satisfied with the outcome. As for what happened afterward, it appears Tyler is struggling to make ends meet, living from one paycheck to the next. He has additional expenses like clearing out my in-laws' rental apartment and paying rent. Moreover, he was dumped by Baker after their affair was exposed. Initially, Baker was ambitious and used Tyler for her own gain, but she distanced herself once Tyler was demoted and she got transferred elsewhere. Tyler reached out to me through my lawyer, expressing regret and asking for another chance. Since I've blocked his calls, he's resorting to communicating through the lawyer. This desperate plea indicates he's truly cornered. He's even asked for financial help, requesting money from my savings from when I was single, which doesn't benefit me at all. Even the lawyer was surprised by this request. I hope Tyler continues to struggle. He deserves it for his actions. By the way, I reached out to Baker through my lawyer, and her response was surprisingly respectful. She conveyed, "While I was with Mr. Tyler, my expenses were minimal, so I enjoyed spending his money. But it didn't last long." She expressed deep regret for everything. It became evident that she was never truly interested in Tyler. Rather, she was attracted to his status. It's sad to see Tyler fall so hard for someone who didn't genuinely care about him. Reflecting on Tyler's downfall brought a smirk to my face. Since then, I've decided to rejoin the workforce. Can you believe it? I took up a part-time job at a convenience store. It's my first time in customer service, and surprisingly, I'm enjoying it. I was initially concerned about being on my feet all day, but once I started, time just flew by, and I found it quite enjoyable. Besides manning the register, there's tasks like stocking shelves, preparing snacks, and various other responsibilities at a convenience store. I even get to utilize my housekeeping skills with the cleaning duties. The manager mentioned that if I put in the effort, I could secure a permanent position. Apparently, there have been others in similar situations who successfully transitioned to full-time roles. Being in my 50s feels like I'm at the midpoint of life. Despite going through a divorce, I initially thought my future looked bleak, but even at this age, I'm discovering new experiences and having a great time. I'm determined to keep looking forward and moving ahead,